It's time to go beyond the headlines, cause I don't put in overtime just so I can headline. Okay, now it's Fox Sports, I'm live with Renee. Going hard every day, sports rapping every play. Different segments for your favorites, coming at you daily with positive vibes, yeah, we some game changers. Basketball, football, soccer, with different interviews, you never know who may pop up. Listen, only on Beyond the Headlines, this is Beyond the Headlines. Only on Beyond the Headlines, this is Beyond the Headlines. Only on Beyond the Headlines, this is Beyond the Headlines.
Welcome back to Beyond the Headlines with Renee Washington. Joining me out of Cincinnati, we have Bengals Beat Reporter for the Cincinnati Enquirer, Tyler Dragon. Tyler, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on today. I appreciate it.
No problem at all. No problem at all. I'm excited to have you on for our first episode of Beyond the Headlines to weigh in on. We'll start off with the Bengals. And
the first episode, huh? That's a lot of pressure.
I was going to say, you got to set the bar high. It's a lot of pressure and no pressure all at the same time. But, yes, you are no pressure, but you're our first episode, one of our first guests on our first episode. So, yes.
Okay. Well, that's a good
welcome. All right. So you work with the Cincinnati Bengals. You get to follow them closely. Them being in the AFC North, we're just going to jump right into it. In the AFC in general, obviously a ton of talent, but specifically for the Bengals who underachieved, we'll use that word, that's the politically correct word, last season, and facing teams like the Cleveland Browns, I mean, what has to happen for them to be a top team in the AFC moving forward?
Well, see, last season the Bengals were marred by injuries. A.J. Green got hurt. Andy Dalton was hurt. A lot of the linebackers were hurt. So hopefully this year they have a good bill of health. I know with football, people are always getting injured here or there. Mm-hmm. So first and foremost, the Bengals have to stay healthy. And it hasn't started off too great with their first-round pick, Noah Williams. He's out for the season, so the Bengals have to reshuffle the offensive line a little bit with him out. He was slated to start at left tackle this year. So hopefully that's the last injury the Bengals have to deal with this offseason. And if they have a good bill of health, I believe the AFC North is wide open. Obviously, the Cleveland Browns are getting all the headlines, but you don't win football games by getting all the headlines. The Ravens, they have a good team. Obviously, they won the AFC North last year with Lamar Jackson leading the way. But Lamar Jackson, he's not a polished pocket passer, and in today's NFL, you have to be able to throw the football consistently to win games. And we saw in the playoffs when Lamar Jackson faced the Los Angeles Chargers, the Chargers took away his running ability and he was not able to beat them with his arm. So with the Bengals, the Ravens, the Cleveland Browns, and then obviously over-reliable the Pittsburgh Steelers, you feel like they are always in the thick of things in the AFC as a whole. But they lost a lot of talent in the offensive end too. So through it all, going into training camp here in the next couple of weeks, I firmly believe the AFC North is wide open.
Okay. I could definitely see that. I mean, we definitely know that Pittsburgh is going to be a team that's going to take some time to bounce back from their offseason changes. Cleveland, with Baker Mayfield, with having OBJ, right now they are the talk of the town, so to speak, but you definitely can't sleep on the Bengals. I even was just seeing you bring up injuries. Carl Lawson, who's coming back after a torn ACL, and he's a good edge rusher. He was even saying on Good Morning Football how Aaron Rodgers is the easier, I should say, to sack than most quarterbacks. But talking about injuries, that's a big part of this. You look over the history of last season, not even just with the Bengals, but across the league. I mean, me being an Eagles fan, got to look at Carson Wentz. It just changes so much if you have, players going down, especially your better players, your leaders. So that's something that hopefully the Bengals can overcome. But who do you think would be the top teams in the East the AFC? I'm still on basketball talk. As of today, if we look across the board on paper without injuries, which we know will happen, but we don't know who will get injured, who do you think is coming out of the AFC?
Okay, well, before I answer that, we do have to circle back to your Eagles fandom soon.
Oh, boy.
Well, my top teams in the AFC going into training camp, this is just off the top of my head right now, just going based off last season and the rosters that the teams have accumulated going into training camp. I have the Patriots still. They're defending Super Bowl champions. You cannot count out Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, obviously.
Absolutely.
I have the Chiefs. I think Patrick Mahomes is going to have another stellar season. And Nyrryk Hill, if he gets his head together and has less off-field problems and is productive on the field, he is one of the best receivers in the National Football League. He is certainly the fastest wide receiver in the National Football League. And then I have the Los Angeles Chargers. I know Chargers don't get a lot of publicity, but they have top to bottom arguably the most talented roster in the entire NFL. So Chargers and the Chargers and the Chiefs and the New England Patriots are my three front runners in the AFC right now.
Ooh, I like that. Okay. I actually agree with all of your points. I think the Chargers are a team that we saw last season, just how dangerous they really can be, you know. And I think that the hardest part really just comes down to injuries, and that's something that continuously shakes up the trajectory of where teams are going to end up. You know, you look at torn ACLs, broken collarbones, whatever it may be, these injuries that happen that have, whether it's a quarterback, it's the leading pass rusher, whatever it is, that really just sets a team back. So it's always hard to really predict what's going to happen because in this sport, injuries are such a big part of the game. But why do we have to get into the Eagles? Are you going to hate on my Eagles? Is that what? Is that where you're going with that? You're going to come on my show and hate on the Eagles?
Well, since you're an Eagles fan, do you believe in Carson Wentz? Are you happy with the team's decision to move forward with Wentz and let Foles packing to the Jacksonville Jaguars? I mean, how do you feel about that as an Eagles fan?
Well, first of all, I didn't know we were on Beyond the Headlines with Tyler Dragon, but no, I'm just kidding. I love it. I've been an Eagles fan, partly being in Jersey. You know, there's always a split of Giants versus Eagles fans. What team do you support? The Jets aren't really in the conversation, although maybe now they will be. But for me, with the Eagles, having watched how things have played out over the last few years, losing Nick Foles to the Jaguars that hurt. That really hurt because he's someone that obviously in our Super Bowl and in even last year, as Carson Wentz went down, he stepped in as our knight in shining armor. So it's a little scary without him. Armor. Yes, Saint Nick, save the day. So it's a little scary without him being on the team because, you know, with Carson Wentz going down with an ACL, as we saw with Carl Lawson on the Bengals and with other players, when you tear an ACL, you're at a high risk to get hurt again. And then we saw him have back problems last year, and he seems like he's been a little bit more injury prone. So with the longevity of the season and with him being a quarterback that likes to run the ball and not just throw the ball in the pocket, there are concerns over his health. But, you know, bringing in a player like Deshaun Jackson who is older in his career but is a true Philly player that Eagles fans will rally around and the team will rally around, you know, and you have players like Malcolm Jenkins and Alshon Jeffrey, Zach Ertz still there. I'm excited for the future of the Eagles, but I am still nervous because I just saw a different Eagles team when Nick Foles was on the field. I don't think he would be the guy to lead our franchise, but I just think he brought something when he stepped on the field when we needed him to help boost, you know, help us play at a different level. So I think Carson Wentz has potential to be a top quarterback in the league. I mean, you talk about Patrick Mahomes and players like Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. He's a tremendous quarterback if he can stay healthy and if he can see the field. And I think that's the biggest thing that has to change for us to be successful this year. He's got to see the field. He's got to see more of his passing options. And he tends to rely heavily on Zach Ertz. He's got to see more of his receivers and players. So I don't know. We'll see, but I'm feeling lucky.
Well, see, I asked that question since you made it known that you're an Eagles fan. But, see, I did used to cover the Cowboys, and going into this season in the NFC East, I used to tell Cowboys fans that I believe the Eagles are a dark horse team in the entire NFC because of Carson Wentz. I am a Carson Wentz believer. I believe he's the best quarterback in the division. And I like what the Eagles did this offseason with the acquisition of Deshaun Jackson and the moves that they made on defense. So I think the Eagles are the front runner to win the division. There have been back-to-back NFC East division winners in a while, as well as the Rams coming out of the NFC West. And you can't forget about the Saints. The Saints have revenge on their minds after that terrible blown call in the playoffs.
Yeah. So those are your predictions coming out of the NFC. I think you just segued right into my next question perfectly. You know, I do think there's a lot to be said about the Saints, and you talk about last year with that incredible no call that happened. I mean, how much does and every year there's always a team that you know, comes close to winning and loses, you know, whether it's the Patriots losing to the Eagles in the Super Bowl or last year with the Rams. Who do you think learns the most from last year's playoff run? Doesn't have to be, you know, the Rams. It could be someone that got knocked out early in the season. Could be the Saints with that call that still to this day is controversial, and I think New Orleans fans would probably fight you if you bring it up. Which team do you think had the most to gain from their postseason run last year, if that makes any sense?
I have to circle back to the Chargers. Last season was the first year in a while that they had some expectations, and that was a team that was young, with the exception of Phillip Rivers, but everybody around Phillip Rivers was pretty young and inexperienced in the postseason. So they had a little bit of success. They won the wild card game over the Ravens, and then they traveled up to New England and got their butts kicked. So I believe that experience is going to help them going forward, and knowing that this year during the regular season they have to play every game with the expectation that, you know, home field advantage is valuable in the playoffs. And also knowing that the Kansas City Chiefs are a force to be reckoned with in that same division. So winning the AFC West is going to be crucial for the Chargers, not only just because you have home field advantage, but then you have teams like the Patriots, teams like the Ravens, teams, you know, like the Steelers or whoever comes out of the AFC North, whoever comes out of the AFC East and so on, that if you get a wild card seed, you're going to have to travel east or you're going to have to travel somewhere.
Exactly.
And the Chargers, being a young team, that might not be beneficial for them.
I like that, actually. I do tend to agree with what you're saying, because I feel like both divisions are very competitive, don't get me wrong, but I just loved watching the battle unfold with the top teams in the AFC, specifically with Kansas City, New England, the Chargers. So I don't know. We'll see. Do you have any predictions, if as of July, who we would be seeing in the Super Bowl in February?
You asked me that in July?
Absolutely. Absolutely, because this is like a true trust test. Could you go based, I mean,
answer?
Of course.
I'll make you a promise.
Paper.
How about I'll make you a promise. I'll be on a later date, and I will tell you on a later date. I can't answer that in July. There's too much that can happen throughout the season. I can say the 6 teams that I did mention, I am confident in either one of those 6 teams winning the Super Bowl. So the Patriots, Chargers, and Chiefs out of the AFC, and the NFC, the Rams, Saints, and Eagles. I'm confident that it will be one of those teams. I'm just not comfortable enough to make that bold statement in July.
So then I guess I can ask you, if we switched into the NBA, to make a prediction on who would be playing in the NBA Finals in June, if you can't predict who's in the NFL in the Super Bowl in February. It's going to just go out on a limb.
Oh, well, that was a slick segue. I see you right there.
Right? Thank you.
Well, see, the NBA doesn't have the parity that the NFL has. So with the NBA, I can say that the Lakers will probably represent the Western Conference in NBA Finals. And then in the East, I was the Bucks or the 76ers.
Oh, okay. Okay, interesting. Well, yeah, let's stick with the NBA discussion really quickly because there have been a ton of off-season. I mean, the draft is always fun to watch, but you just don't know how these guys are going to step into the league. So it's still so much up in the air. But we've seen some trades, we've seen some free agency moves that have literally shaken up the NBA. And you talk about the Lakers now being a team that you predict that can come out of the Western Conference. I am also a LeBron James fan, so I am Team Lakers, so I love that. But more importantly,
you're supposed to be a 76ers fan.
I love watching the Sixers, but I'm Team LeBron. So it's weird, but I've always been a LeBron James fan from back when he was in high school. No bandwagon fans here. That being said, the latest question that has really been up in the air is where does Russell Westbrook go? And I was talking about this earlier on the show. We know that Paul George, who claimed he was going to stay in OKC, as soon as Kawhi picked up the phone and called him, he's out. He's now in L.A. with the Clippers with Kawhi Leonard. Russell Westbrook once again left all alone on OKC and requesting a trade. What team do you think he ends up going to? And what team makes the best sense for him to go to, I should say?
I've been hearing reports that the Miami Heat are interested and the feeling is mutual with Russell Westbrook. So I have a feeling that is his best fit. They obviously have your former Sixers player there and Jimmy Butler, and I think that will be a good combination in Miami with Butler playing the forward or the two and you having Westbrook playing the point guard. There are not many teams that are able to maneuver salary cap-wise to get Westbrook because his contract is so massive, and the Heat will have to do some reshuffling to get Westbrook as well. But I've been hearing that there's interest from both parties, so I think the Miami Heat is the best fit for Westbrook.
All right. I have heard rumors of the Heat as well as the Rockets, which would be interesting from the link up with his former teammate James Harden, who we haven't seen him play with since back when James Harden was just the sixth man on OKC and before he blew up. So I don't know. I mean, with Jimmy Butler down in Miami, who went to Miami allegedly to be the guy, which still doesn't fully make sense to me, leaving a Sixers team that is a championship contender, that would be interesting to see how things would change if Russell goes there, because Russell Westbrook would then become the guy. So who knows? But your predictions for the Lakers versus either the Bucks or Sixers stands out to me.
Yeah.
On the East, we saw some changes. Kemba Walker's in Boston now. We know Kyrie and Katie, once Katie gets back healthy, they're in Brooklyn. So why the Bucks and Sixers? I'm curious. I'm surprised you didn't say, although the Bucks are a good pick, I'm surprised you didn't say like the Celtics actually.
Well, the Celtics, I'm not a believer in Kemba Walker being a superstar type player. He's a very good player. He's an all-star. But they got worse losing Kyrie Irving, and they got worse losing Al Horford. As far as Jason Tatum, I think he's a potential all-star player, but I don't think he's there yet. Maybe in a couple years he can get there. So the Celtics, they took 2 steps back. They lost 2 perennial all-stars in Irving and Horford, so that's 2 steps back. So that's why I don't have them there. And then as far as the Bucks, I'm a firm believer in Giannis. I think he's in the next 3-4 years could be the best player in the NBA after LeBron retires. I know Anthony Davis and other players will have something to say about that. But, I mean, reigning MVP, Giannis, he is outstanding. He just needs a jump shot. He's a jump shot away from being the best player in the NBA, and I think that's a few years down the line where he's going to get a consistent jump shot where teams will have to respect that ability. So that's why I have the Bucks there. And then as far as the Sixers, they did lose some talent. They lost J.J. Redick and, as we mentioned, Jimmy Butler, but they still have the best big man in the East and Joel Embiid. They got Ben Simmons, although I'm pretty confident in a game of horse. If we shoot, I can beat Ben Simmons. So hopefully Ben Simmons is practicing on his jumper as we speak because he needs it bad.
He needs it in the worst way. Well, I actually agree with your points. I do think Kemba Walker, we saw him in Charlotte. He had some incredible numbers and games with a team that was average at best. So if he can be the guy to help rally the Celtics to be back in the conversation of being a top team in the East, them, the Bucks, with Giannis, and Giannis's brother, his older brother, is actually just signed to Milwaukee too. So we've got the Greek Freak and the Greek Freak Junior, part 2. I don't know. And then we've got the Sixers, who to me are still in the air because, I'm not sure who's going to be the big offensive threat for them. I don't know if Tobias Harris if he's going to step up. We know Ben Simmons' jump shot and perimeter game is non-existent, and we know Joel Embiid can't stay healthy, so they're inconsistent to me and a big question mark, but they definitely have the potential. So you bring up some really great points, and I thank you for joining us on Beyond the Headlines this week. I do want you to take a moment, let people know where they can follow you on social media, because as we get into the NFL season, and definitely when I get you back on the show to make your NFL predictions, plus, of course, the NBA as it unwinds, you've got a lot of great analysis and commentary that people would love to see. So where can we follow you?
Okay, well, you can follow me on Twitter. My handle is @TheTylerDragon, and you can read my work, see my videos, podcasts on Cincinnati.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us on our very first episode of Beyond the Headlines. It has been a pleasure getting to talk football and basketball with you, and I'm looking forward to having you back on in the future.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on and talking a little bit of NBA. I know I'm an NFL guy, but being able to talk to NBA is a little bit refreshing. So thanks for having me on.
I'm sure. I'm sure. Thank you.